Back here on the bonus round from the new Game Trailers office in Los Angeles. I am Jeff Keighley. This week we are talking about the impending launch of Destiny from Bungie with Garnet Lee, Andrew Renee, and Brandon Jones. Destiny, a massive launch coming up here on September 9th from Bungie. I think we've all spent time with the game in the alpha and the beta. Brandon, let me get your take on this. You know, we haven't had that many kind of Game of the Year caliber games so far this year. It feels like Destiny could potentially be, you know, a really strong contender when it comes out. We'll have to see. I mean, none of us have played the final game, but what's your sort of what's your bet right now on how Destiny is going to land?
Well, that's like the big question, is the critical take. Is this a good game or not? You know, we've seen a lot of it. It seems like a huge thing, but it is such a huge reach. And usually you can get kind of a sense of a traditional MMO a lot easier. You know, if you're playing your fantasy MMOs, the Elder Scrolls Online, you're kind of sifting through screenshots. With Destiny, they were using a lot of environments. They've really kind of like held like other planets out, you know, for like big reveals, Mars and the Moon for the beta and stuff. So yeah, I think it's going to be huge. Whether it's a good game or not, there's just no way to tell, because you have to get in there and see that end stuff. And talking with with Activision, they're like, we really want people reviewing it, to get all the way to the end of the game and experience some of this cool stuff. And it's like, who knows what that's going to be? Well,
and one of the open questions I think is how much is in Destiny, content-wise, right? And I saw some quotes last week where Bungie was saying this is our biggest game ever. You know, MMOs have a big expectation about how much content is there. The beta had a lot of great stuff, but how much more is there on all these planets? How long is it going to take you to sort of complete the story? Andrea, what are you expecting when you put in Destiny on 9.9?
I'm expecting to have hopefully a really deep, MMO RPG experience from the perspective of a first-person shooter, because that's what I felt like I got in the beta and in the alpha. I mean, Bungie has repeatedly said this is the biggest game that we've ever made, and if anyone's ever played a Halo game, those games are also very large. Right. Very linear, but large. I mean, they go on for quite some time. I always felt like when I was playing Halo, I was like, this has got to be the last chapter. Now, this has got to be the last chapter, and it just always kept going. So if that's any indication, hopefully there's a lot of endgame content. They've talked a little bit about, what you get beyond like level 20 and what kind of that, more RPG experiences. And I'm just really pumped to play it. I mean, I think that it's all relative to how long of an experience is, to how much time or how much fun you have in the game. You want to, like, sometimes it's okay to have like a very concise experience. Like, I've always enjoyed Call of Duty's campaigns, even though they get criticized every year for being too short. But
finish it in a weekend and you're done.
Right, it's like playing a blockbuster movie, and I think that that's an okay experience. But I really am looking forward to seeing just how far down the rabbit hole we get to go with Destiny.
Right. I know the end game. They've talked to me a lot about how that's going to be really sort of a challenge for people in terms of how you're going to really have to gang up with a lot of your friends, and it's going to push you to your limit. So it's going to be a very difficult game, I think, at very high levels as well. Garnet, you played the beta.
Yeah.
What's your take on sort of the opportunity that Destiny has here? Could it be Game of the Year?
Oh, absolutely, could be Game of the Year. I mean, the production quality is there. Bungie obviously has the chops to do it. My suspicion is that this will be a game unlike any console player has played before, in that if you played big MMOs, you know that there are two phases to them. There's the whole leveling system, and then there's all the things that take place at the end of the game.
Yep.
And I feel like the thing we don't know about Destiny is how well have they done all of that end game content. My friend Luke Smith has been there working on that stuff. Yep. He played WoW for a long, long time. Super knows how to run on that thing. If you haven't done that before, though, it's a lot of going on instanced adventures. So you go back to the same places, but maybe there are different triggers. So you go through the same...
A little more randomized.
A little more randomized, that sort of experience. And I'm wondering how console players will respond to that sort of staccato experience.
Right.
I mean, if you played the beta, that a lot of times what happens is, go back to Halo. Halo, you can play those chapters. And you play a chapter and you're ready for another chapter. I mean, you can play until 3 o'clock in the morning playing those long chapters. Whereas Destiny was, you play, a chunk, and it's like about 20 minutes. And then something else happens, or you're just in the adventure world, and you're going off and doing a quick mission, and that's like 5 to 10, 15 minutes, or a rift, and maybe it's an hour, but it's lots of different chunks of things. Yeah. And I wonder how console players who are more accustomed to wanting to have that big grand experience are going to take, hey, that's it, but the 1 through 20, that was you learning how to play the game, and now we're going to turn you loose to do all this dungeon experience. And I don't know.
No, and how that blends, I also think, with story, because Bungie's known for sort of incredible stories, incredible
that's the big
worlds.
Point there.
We know about Ghost, but I mean, in terms of those other characters, we've seen them sort of hinted at. But how much story and narrative is there to this game? How much is there on day one? versus how much are they going to add down the road. I mean, they've already announced the first expansion is going to come in December, so it feels like there's going to sort of be ongoing content. But Brandon, how much of this do you want to be a story game versus sort of more of a...
The beta was super light on story,
Right.
and actually creating other characters when I would approach that unskippable cutscene, it's kind of like, oh
Right.
God, I've already seen this, I'm good,
Yeah.
I don't need to. And to me, actually, doing voice work, it's a little distracting whenever it's like, oh, it's that guy, kind of takes me out of like getting into the story. It's like, I think the original Halo, Master Chief not knowing that actor, and like kind of growing more, and Cortana like not being someone that we're used to seeing in film or television, a lot. And so, yeah, I don't. Story in MMOs is really tough, and I think I'm worried that Bungie will take the approach to get into these big set piece moments, and people that are used to playing online games. Like, I felt really bad. I really wanted to get into the lore of Warcraft, and then 40, 50 hours in, I'm just a click, through quests.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't need that. I can get it and absorb it,
Well,
but
you
I
wonder,
just don't
as you
have
play
the time.
through this, it's like, the story, will it be sort of, oh, I've seen this before, and it's like, it's like how much story is there, and how will that ramp? Because you said, I think there's going to be my prediction is there's going to be a certain audience that will sort of start playing it and not necessarily get all the way to the end, like a lot of games. But then there will be other people that will really start grinding on this.
The design trick to all of these sorts of games is getting you enough lore, Brandon, that you're happy with the lore, but ultimately you telling your story inside the game. And I think they've been really, they've been kind of smart in the way they've set it up, in that the whole idea of being a guardian and what you're going to do does sort of set up of you're telling your personal story, but there are these other grand experiences that go along with that, and what are the ghosts and how do all these things work together. But the key piece will be, when I get to the end of the game, am I feeling like I'm telling my interesting, unique story in the world they've created, or am I feeling like I'm following, a trail that everybody's following?
Well, I mean, it could suffer from what, a lot of games that incorporate player choice suffer, like Mass Effect 3 did, where you kind of feel like you have this illusion of choice, and then you all end up coming back to the same point anyway.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see how Bungie does tell that story, because if you look at some of the comments for some of the Let's Plays that are out there for the beta, a lot of people are saying, oh, it's so repetitive, it's the same thing, it's just repeat, repeat, repeat.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell if that was just the experience that we got to see because it was a beta and it was just a slice of the game, or if that's going to be, like you mentioned earlier, like the kind of MMO grinding experience.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell until the game actually gets there.
No, and that's the thing, is it's we've seen sort of a slice of the game, but what that full game is, I don't think we're really honestly even going to experience it until the 9th, when the world is fully populated and everyone's going to be logging on together. And you think of something like the Tower, it's like, will we want to spend much time there? Or are you going to sort of just pass by? When I was in the beta, I was just sort of like, I didn't really get that in depth in the Tower. I was sort of like, go do what I need to do and kind of leave. But it's like, will sort of this community kind of evolve?
And many have questioned, is the end game also just competitive multiplayer?
Right.
And for a lot of people, that's going to be like a mixed blessing, because there are going to be people who really want to do that, and then once you get into that, then of course it immediately starts to raise the floor of how hard it is to play the game.
Right.
But then for a lot of other folks, they're going to look at it and say, well, I just wanted, I wanted to go play this cool multiplayer, PvE experience against the environment, against the enemies, and I didn't want to just get built up to go to play multiplayer. I think it'll have both, but that is a concern I've heard as well.
Well, the difficulty in the beta and the alpha made it seem like it was almost impossible to play by yourself.
Right.
And that's something that I know people who are more fans of a traditional RPG experience are like, well, I didn't want to play with a group. I wanted to experience Destiny on my own, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be feasible once you get past a certain
No,
level.
it feels like with the with the strikes and stuff. I mean, it's like you're going to have to sort of have.
They've even said as much on the highest tier stuff. You're going to only be able to play with friends. Which personally, I mean, I think that's a bit of a mistake. But I think they'll have to.
I don't think it has to be friends. I guess it's just other players, right? So they may populate you together with.
No,
No, there's no
that's
matchmaking.
There's no matchmaking
So
on
they
the
were
top
talking
level
about
stuff. You
that
have to play
last
with
I
week.
didn't know that. Okay, wow. So you
Yeah,
have
which
to
was something that I couldn't believe that they were like, the raids are, you have to, I think the quote was that they had hoped that because people are finding a community in the
Right.
tower and
Right.
interacting
Over
with
time,
people,
you'll make friends, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So it's like people I guess. But you're right. It's like if you're playing late at night, it's like who's there with you to be able to play through that? Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that could maybe be a silver lining with the environments. I think a lot of the repetition that people were saying is we're seeing the same environments. Even in the trailer, we're seeing the same environments over and over again. There's only so many times you can do the swoop with the guy on the bike. It's like, I get it, there's bikes. What I'm excited to see is, I like it when I play MMOs and they repurpose old environments and give players an excuse to go back and to old areas. it looks like repetition, you know, and it could potentially be repetition if you're like, I can't just run up this hill one more time. But at the same time, as a level 1, 2, 5 player, and if I see a group of 20s go by, I wonder what are they doing? Why are they coming back to this place? And if you can make that relevant in the story and think of creative ways that you can send players back to, you know, to repeat certain areas, but change the weather, change the
also,
conditions.
I think Bungie's going to be in there controlling stuff, and that's why, you know, out of all the games coming this year, the sheer kind of ambition of what they're trying to pull
the
off
sheer ambition's way up there.
feels way different, and that's, you know, something that I think will give them a lot of opportunity, I think, to sort of surprise people on the 9th. So we'll all be there together on September 9th checking out Destiny.
Depending what platform we're on.
I know. You already said in a previous segment, PlayStation 4, right? All right, we'll be back next Sunday with more bonus round right here on GT.